Let's get into Week 9 trade targets, buys and sells of the week. There are some good ones.
There are. Finally have some good ones.
Finally have some good ones. A lot of people are still struggling through bye week hell. So if a team is in a must-win situation and they have a player that's on bye, you can use that to your advantage. So Week 9 buys. Let's go ahead and start with one Tyrell Williams of the San Diego Chargers.
Tyrell Williams. Tyrell the Gazelle Williams.
Tyrell the Gazelle. That's his new nickname.
Yeah.
I love it.
This one I feel like he shouldn't be too expensive to buy because he's been so up and down. And he's now coming off of like a very bad week, so the owner's probably frustrated because it's like he has a big week and then you start him and he does nothing, and then you bench him and he has a big week, so owner's probably frustrated. And the two things that help him is the biggest is that Travis Benjamin is hurt. Has this PCL injury. It turned out to not need surgery or anything. It's just a sprain, but we've seen Lockett try to play through this sprain for the past month, and he hasn't been able to. Like, he's been slow, and if it affects Travis in the same way, he's just going to be a non-factor out there. And Tyrell was already leading the team in targets going into Week 8. So now with a sort of depleted Travis out there running around, you hope that continues. And then the schedule is really good. Tennessee this week, Miami after that, then the bye. Houston, which is his one bad matchup the rest of the year. But then
from there on out, my goodness.
It's golden. Tampa Bay, Carolina, Oakland, Cleveland in the fantasy championship. That's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, if you just look at his playoff schedule, you just touch on it. Carolina in Week 1 of the playoffs, they are the worst team against opposing wide receivers, the worst team in the league. Then you have Oakland, who is the 12th worst. So they're they've slowly kind of turned into this middling.
I think something just happened in the World Series.
Yeah, the Cubs have just won the World Series, so they broke their 108-year drought. So congratulations to all those Cubs fans out there.
I have no idea why my roommate is screaming about this. As far as I know, he doesn't care about baseball at all. So I don't know where this is coming from. Maybe I'm wrong, but
that was quite the celebration.
It was the happiest I've heard anyone ever be. That was like a little girl at a Justin Bieber concert, or how I would be at a Justin Bieber concert.
Well, actually, I think what really happened is that not that the Cubs won the World Series, but he just acquired Tyrell Williams in a trade.
That was it. He's like,
that's
I got him. I got Tyrell.
Yes, look at that playoff schedule.
Anyway, let's get back on this. Yeah,
worst
Carolina
against wide receivers. Oakland, they have been lit up, and Tyrell Williams actually lit them up already this season. Mm-hmm. And then Cleveland in the fantasy championship. I mean, talk about dream schedule. Like you said, Houston's really the only bad matchup. And if the PCL injury slows down Benjamin, like it has other players this season, then Tyrell Williams could be the man. And Phillip Rivers has actually looked good. He's looked really, really good this year. So buy into Tyrell Williams.
Yeah, not much more to it than that. Good schedule. Target should increase with Travis, a shell of himself. And I guess a little bit of a worry with Dontrell Inman. And they kind of seem to seesaw, but I think Tyrell's at least just like a slightly better player. He at least gets more targets overall, so that's kind of the reason it's on him.
Yep. So who's next?
Next up on the buy low parade. This one is like kind of obvious, but I still think he's worth like going out and getting because maybe the owner isn't that key down on it, and that's Derrick Henry of the Tennessee Titans. He had his big game last week when DeMarco got banged up for a little bit and was out of the game, and then Henry finally got like a real shot at a workload and just feasted with it. It was very good. And now DeMarco Murray's been limited all week. There's talk about limiting his workload when he's probably going to play. He's have a limited workload, and Derrick Henry's going to get worked in, and so this could become a committee. And with DeMarco Murray's health history, it's possible that Henry ends up the full-time guy at some point this year.
Yeah, and whenever you hear a toe injury with a running back, it's never good. He had his MRI, which came up clean, but he's limited in practice. These toe injuries, we've seen a lot of these toe injuries this season, and they kind of just linger. So you never know.
Let it linger.
had to bring the cranberries into this, didn't you?
What else?
It's a beautiful thing. But to me, when I'm looking at the situation with DeMarco Murray, it's not quite the same, but it mirrors the whole Chris Johnson, David Johnson situation last year. I mean, DeMarco Murray is a much better running back than Chris Johnson. But Chris Johnson, he had his moment in the sun for fantasy football. He kind of came back. He revived his career a little bit last year, was leading the league in rushing through 8 weeks of the season, exactly where we are right now. And he had this talented rookie behind him in David Johnson. And as soon as he went down, David Johnson came in and just lit the world on fire, probably won people some fantasy championships.
Yeah.
Now, DeMarco Murray, he's on pace for 376 touches this year, which is banana sandwich. I mean, last year, the banana sandwich. Last year, Adrian Peterson, who is a cyborg, or he was a cyborg at least, rest in peace, he led the league with 357 touches. So DeMarco Murray is on pace to smash that with the usage he's getting now. And he's already dealing with this lingering toe injury. Who knows how they're going to divvy up the touches. Derrick Henry's shown that he's very capable. And if DeMarco Murray misses time, then Derrick Henry's a locked and loaded running back 1 in that offense.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
And that's what you're counting on. And he shouldn't really cost you that much. I mean, honestly, if you own DeMarco Murray, you should have Derrick Henry on your team because you're living the dangerous life if you don't.
Yeah, I think that's and his schedule is good too. They get even the next few weeks are good. San Diego, Green Bay, you don't love, but then Indy after that. But even if you look ahead to like the fantasy playoffs when it could potentially be him, it's Denver, Chiefs, Jaguars, and none of those are scary. I would call Denver and Chiefs like at worst a neutral matchup, and he just ran all over the Jags last week, so we know that's good.
Yeah, Derrick Henry, go out and get him. Derrick Henry. I mean, he was probably a very popular waiver wire ad this week.
Yeah,
because he was still available in more than 50% of leagues prior to that Thursday night game. So I'm assuming he was a very popular waiver wire ad. And because of that, I doubt anyone's really starting him with confidence, at least.
Right.
We might bring his name up a little bit later in this show, and some foreshadowing there. But he should be relatively easy to get. The next and last player on our buy list, we're going to throw out a position I believe we haven't really thrown out in the buy section. Or we've done it very rarely, at least, up to this point in the season. And that's the tight end.
Woo, finally bringing in the tight end.
And I'm going to go out and say, make an offer or look into trading for Tyler Eifert. Now, you might be thinking, well, bench stash, didn't Tyler Eifert just light up the Washington Redskins in London? Yeah, he did. Yeah. But Tyler Eifert's going on to his bye week. People still might not be fully bought in on his health. They should be. He looked really, really healthy. He looked spry in that game. But the bye week plays a big part because, like I mentioned earlier, you're getting to the point where people need to win. You're in the must-win section of the season. And if you have a team that in your league that owns Tyler Eifert and they can't start him this week because he's on the bye, then you can offer something for Tyler Eifert. I mean, you're still going to have to pay a little bit because he's honestly probably a top 3, top 5 tight end rest of the season. And if you look at his schedule the rest of the way, it's pretty good. It's not terrible. He gets Cleveland in the playoffs. That's what you're looking for, right? First week of the playoffs, he gets Cleveland. Then he gets Pittsburgh, Houston. Houston's a little bit tough. Houston's kind of his one bad matchup in terms of the playoffs because they're the third best against the tight end. But outside of that, I mean, he gets Pittsburgh, and they're not great. They're kind of middle of the road against the tight end, and Cleveland, who just are terrible against everything. But more so than schedule, you just look at Cincinnati's offense and how they use Tyler Eifert. And before Tyler Eifert came back from his injury, how they were running their offense, it was apparent that they were missing a red zone threat. I mean, they would drive down the field and they couldn't punch it in. Eifert comes back, and he gets. I mean, he was utilized like Gronk in this last game. Basically, Gronk light.
Yeah.
I mean, if you watch the game, I mean, they were leaning on him heavily. He had over 10 targets. He had 9 catches for over 100 yards and a touchdown. He saw his red zone target. He was getting looks on big third down plays, so Dalton is comfortable throwing to him. And at such a volatile position, it might be a huge benefit to have a red zone monster like Tyler Eifert, because he's good for the touchdowns. But the way he was being utilized in that game, he also had an incredibly high floor without that touchdown. You take that touchdown away, and he's still over 10 points, which is absurd for a tight end. You don't really see that outside of Gronk and maybe Jordan Reed and when he's healthy, or Greg Olsen as well. These are the guys. But anyways, Tyler Eifert, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I'm with you on it. He's probably the 3rd or 4th best tight end in fantasy when he's healthy. And he's just like he's Dalton's security blanket now, because with no Sanu, no Marvin Jones, LaFell is bad. Boyd is a rookie and still like growing. It's kind of been like AJ Green and just like anyone who can manage to catch the ball. And so like Eifert was sorely missed and is like immediately, a big impact to get in the offense. And yeah, the bye week is the perfect time, like you said, to be buying from a team that is, struggling. One's like, you can't afford to lose this week. You got to start looking for win nows. So in that scenario, you could probably get him pretty reasonably. And even if you have to pay like an all right price, a tight end you can actually trust starting every week is like pretty valuable, because it's hard to stream tight end.
It is. It's really up and down. I mean, the only saving grace is that you're probably going to play someone who's also in the same position.
Right.
But if you run into somebody who's playing, a Greg Olsen or a Gronk or Jordan Reed, Jimmy Graham's been good this year too. So there are a few tight ends out there where it could lose you the week. And having that just play, start, set, and leave tight end is really valuable. I mean, it gives you peace of mind, and it could be, if you win that position big, it could be exactly what you need to win a week.
Yeah, my sort of mindset with streaming versus owning a tight end is that in the first half of the season, I have no problem just streaming, because you're not going to run into enough good tight ends that you lose at that position more often than not. Like, you're only going to run into like Gronk or Reed, like, Olsen. You're only going to run into those guys maybe like once or twice in the first half of your season. And even if you lose those weeks, you're still going to, the tight end isn't going to be the reason you lose your week most of the time throughout the season.
Exactly.
But after that, you want to start acquiring one, because when you get to the playoffs, it's a 1 week at a time system. So like you can't afford to lose any week because of the tight end. So that's when it's worth it to start acquiring the tight ends that can help you.
Yeah, and Tyler Eifert. If you look at the tight end landscape, Gronk is untouchable. I mean, he's probably as close to untouchable in the tight end position as you can get, unless the Gronk owner is in serious shambles. Olsen probably comes at a high price. Jordan Reed, he's healthy again, and I mean, he's Jordan Reed. He was the second best tight end last season.
Yeah.
Tyler Eifert might be the most acquirable tight end right now, because he's only had one game where he played a full set of snaps and was heavily utilized. And now he's going into his bye week, so maybe the owner needs help in other parts of his team.
For sure.
For shizzle.